So Gerald, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for
having
being
me.
here and putting your best foot forward. This is very impressive. I always want to buy things after you make videos because the typical videos I make, laptops, cameras, I'm like, sometimes, most of the time, I'm not going to buy them and use them personally, but I'm like, other people, yeah, you know, they probably want to know about it. You have hit a flow in the past few weeks where literally every video you make, I need that. For the mini nano leaf, the BenQ monitor, because my monitor situation is a mess. I'm always focusing things on really tiny screens. I'm like, I need a huge monitor to monitor what I'm filming. Just one after the other, man. So give the audience some context of what you do if they don't know you already.
Yeah, I guess it's funny because we had a conversation about that, right? Of like, what is that I do? I guess the easiest way to describe it, I guess, what you said is what a lot of people say is that I just go deeper on the topics, but the same topics that you'd see on YouTube. But I mean, in the camera world, but not just cameras. I say creative technology. That's like my thinking of like tech that goes into making stuff, you know? So it could be audio, lighting, cameras, lenses, whatever, computers, that kind of stuff.
And you dive deep, right?
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes I get too in the weeds and then I have to reel it back. But then I watch one of your videos and I'm like, hey, if he's doing it, I'm fine. I can get a little bit in the weeds. There's
people out there.
Yeah, there's people out there. I listened to your podcast with Tyler and you guys got so into it. I was like, okay, I want to get into the nitty gritty because I didn't even know this. Do you use an XPS?
I do, yeah. That's the Dell XPS, right?
Yeah. Because for some reason I thought you were a Mac guy. So I was like, oh, this could be an intriguing thing to talk about because there's so many things I love about the computer and there's a few quirky things that I really can't explain. So which version do you have?
So I'm gonna play my like I'm kind of lame here card because I don't know the model numbers that well, but generation wise, I think my stomach just made a really weird sound. And the mic probably picked it up. That's the con of using a good mic.
I didn't notice it, but we're definitely going to clip that up.
Okay. So did they just come out with a brand new generation? And
Yes.
So then I guess I'm two ago.
Okay, so we have the same one.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be the 9570.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you have issues with your display?
No, but you know what? Every time I stream with it, because I use it as like my live streaming thing, there's one or two people that say like, you should make a video. I see you got the XPS, you should make a video on and then there's like 2 or 3 different things about displays, whether it's like I think the software that goes with it to like calibrate it or whatever. Some people have issues. And then there's another type of hardware issue. I haven't had any of those issues, so I don't know what they are. I never looked into them.
Interesting. So for the most part, Dell and a lot of Windows laptops, I think have figured out the weird display thing. But even on the Book 3, I'm on the Surface Book 3 right now, it'll randomly, even if you have it unchecked where it automatically changes the brightness, you know how you can have that checked off or whatever?
Right.
Even if I don't have that setting on, it will randomly change brightness and refuse to get a certain brightness. Like it'll detect, oh, I'm in a dark room. You don't need this screen that bright. But it'll mess up the color because as it gets brighter, it gets more saturated.
Right. So
it's just, for some reason, I've had bad lucks with displays. And the only ones that I haven't is the Asus ZenBook Pro Duo. I'm hoping the new Dell is fine because my Dell XPS 13 2-in-1 is great. I've never had issues on that. That display is amazing. So maybe it's something that they've had to grow out of. I don't know. So I was curious. So you've had no problems. Have you been a PC guy your entire life?
Yes. The only Apple products I think I've had outside of, I think I had like an Apple II a long time ago. But
an Apple II? How old are you?
I'm older.
There's no way you had an Apple II.
I had every like computer iteration that came out from like VIC-20, Commodore 64, like as these things were like, I was like really into computers when I was like a toddler. So
interesting.
Cool. Yeah, like I played my first games on a cassette tape that I loaded into like my VIC-20 and it was like Frogger and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow.
But outside of that and then an iPhone, I had like iPhone 3GS and 5. I think those are the only Apple products, and iPods. Those are the only Apple products I've ever owned.
You're an Android user as well.
Yeah. Although this would probably make you laugh. I only recently started having a phone for NAB 2019. That was the first phone I had since whenever the iPhone 5 came out.
Wait, what
So
do
that was
you
a while
mean?
ago. Like I just didn't have a phone. I just didn't have a phone at all during that time. So I had an iPhone 5, got it like when it came out, like, you know, first day, used it for, you know, a year or whatever. And then then at some point, I don't remember why or how, but at some point I just stopped. I was like, that's it for phones. And then I just didn't have a phone.
Hold on. So you're not saying you didn't upgrade. You're literally saying you didn't use a phone in that time period.
Right, yeah. I think I kept the iPhone 5 just like sitting around as like a music player or something that I used occasionally for like Bluetooth playing music, but I didn't have a phone number, a phone plan, nothing.
What? I have so many questions. How do you talk to people? How do you social media? How did you email?
I'm on like a computer. Like I did everything on the computer.
Wow.
There was a thing, like, because there were still some people that texted me, and my cell phone provider for a while had this thing. It was called like Rogers at home or whatever, and you could like load your texts in a browser. And I think I used that for a little while to transition.
So how do you like call a family member?
Yeah, I don't do that a lot. That's why. Honestly, it worked for me. It wouldn't work for a lot of people, but it worked for me. I was like, you know, I got there because I was like, I don't use this for anything other than, I don't know, playing chess and going on like Twitter or whatever. So I was like, who needs that? I was like, I'm not carrying it. I just didn't want to carry it around anymore and feel like I had it with me all the time. So I stopped. And the few people that texted me on the regular, I said, look, if you need to get hold of me, contact me these other ways. And eventually people transitioned. But then
Gerald doesn't have friends.
Exactly. All my friends are online, and like I prefer typing on the keyboard. But as you know, trying to run a YouTube channel and a social media presence, especially Instagram, without a phone became impossible. So there was a time where I was like, okay, I got to get a phone again. So I did, and it was an Android when I got it.
That is fascinating. So while all these people over here debate Mac or PC or iPhone versus Android, you're over here just like, bro, I just need like something to type on and like make stuff. I could care less.
But I am into like PC, like enthusiast builds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do like my computer, you know?
What desktop do you have?
All my computers are custom built. I don't mean to be like, oh, all my computers are custom built, but it's not like a
you,
Dell
enjoy
or whatever, you know?
Right.
I do, yeah. Big hobby.
So what's your setup? I'm curious.
So I'm actually in the middle of a new build, but the one that I've been working on for the last, I guess, like 2 years, it's an Intel i7-8700K, overclocked to almost 5 gigahertz, and an NVIDIA GTX 1080. And I built that in 2018 as like my editing rig. And it's been fine. It's been doing okay. But I've been monkeying around with some stuff lately that's been making it chug just a little bit, and I wanted to cover some of the new AMD stuff, so I'm doing a new build on that, and I think I might actually do it on the channel, because I don't usually cover computer stuff that much on the channel. So
well, I kind of want to talk about that, because so my main gear setup is actually pretty similar. It's the i9 1080 Ti, SSD, I think 64 gigs of RAM. So it definitely still holds up today, but recently I tried to do a video, and I'm still trying to do a video on it, but it's a computer with the new Threadripper that's like, 32 cores, super crazy, but it has AMD GPUs. I usually am all about NVIDIA life. So I've been testing those out for the first time, and it's interesting. I'm not getting, 32 cores. You're so excited. I feel like I'm not getting as much as I would have thought out of it, and maybe it's Premiere isn't optimized or whatever, but we had this update come out, and I want to talk about the new Premiere update, because it sounds like this is now exclusive to Windows, correct? So it's AMD and NVIDIA GPUs for Windows.
Right.
We have some new acceleration.
Right.
And what's going on with those? Because people are confused. They see AMD and they're like, is my MacBook going to get faster? And I have to remind them, guys, watch my last MacBook Pro 16 video, and the MacBook Pro actually smoked my Asus ZenBook Duo with an i9 and a 2060 in it. So MacBook is fine. Like, we need the help with our
Was that for
NVIDIA
Premiere
graphics.
or was that Final Cut?
Oh, it was Premiere.
Yeah. I think so 2 things to that. One is I'm not in love with AMD GPUs for video editing, even though they're both accepted in the new update. And I think that's just because people have built software on the CUDA core aspect of NVIDIA. So it's
that's what I'm discovering. I'm like, dude, the CUDA render.
Yeah, you got to get that CUDA, right?
Got to get that CUDA.
So they do have AMD stuff, and even the new Premiere update that allows GPU acceleration, it has AMD as an option, but the people that are pushing this is NVIDIA, right? Because it's like that's where the development goes in. So I do think that AMD has the best value processors right now for building a new editing rig. But for graphics, I think you should put an NVIDIA graphics card in your AMD machine.
I think it's because, I reached out to a company. I was like, listen, I need to do a video on the new 32 core processor. And that's all I said. I was just like, stick it in a sick PC and send it to me.
Yeah.
So of course they owe all AMD, right? And
sure.
I had, it was just kind of disappointing. It was weird. I think, I don't know, it depends on the graphics more than I thought, because especially once you start putting on color grade, you start adding effects, that stuff adds up, and that CUDA rendering actually makes a big difference. Especially
with Premiere, which, I mean, I don't have any like numbers to give you, but based on personal experience and the experience of other people that I trust, it does just feel like NVIDIA's CUDA optimization for Premiere is definitely more favored over whatever AMD's Metal or whatever it's called that they do on their end, right?
100%.
But the new update, to answer the question, all it is basically, because some people in my video were confused saying, well, I already had GPU rendering. And that was for Intel's QuickSync, which it came out like a couple years ago or whatever.
I made a whole video about it and it just confused people.
Well, but it was like you can use the iGPU in your CPU to speed up your renders, right? So people might have already had hardware as a drop down all along, because that's all it says is hardware encoding. And they're like, I already have hardware encoding. But now what they're doing is they're using your dedicated GPU, your $1,000 big card that you plugged in.
The one that you want to be using.
Now you can use that. That's the new update. Yeah. And it does make a difference. And the quality is good too, because I never liked the QuickSync thing. Like, people were talking about it's much faster, but I was getting glitches and I didn't like and I thought it was a bit softer and stuff. Where NVIDIA has been doing this thing with NVENC, which is like the best like GPU encoding that you can, like, people are live streaming with it. And they used to complain years ago, oh yeah, it's more efficient, but it's softer, or like not as detailed or not as good color. But these days, with the latest GPU card, with the latest NVIDIA GPUs, it's just as good, if not better, and more efficient, and faster and everything. So it's awesome. It's awesome stuff.
Yeah, I'm always getting those questions since I make a lot of videos about computers and stuff. It's always, Sara, MacBook Pro 16 or this, MacBook Pro or this. And it doesn't even matter if they even don't travel a lot and they could probably swing for a desktop. For some reason, people are still like MacBook Pro, MacBook Pro, MacBook Pro. And so a lot of times I feel like the answer, especially if you want affordability, and maybe even if you have a display already, is like, you can get some really good value from a custom built PC and you can get exactly what you want. So what would you recommend people who, hey, maybe they want to game a little bit, they want to edit videos, they want something pretty speedy, and they don't want to spend maybe over $2,000. What rig would you recommend for them?
Yeah, so I do think that the AMD processors are the way to go for bang for the buck right now. Intel is making some moves, but and they're still the best for game. Like, if you're a hardcore gamer and every frame counts, Intel does still seem to win in the ultimate like gaming benchmarks, but it's really close with AMD, and AMD's cheaper, and they're better for productivity for the last, I don't know, year and a half now, because of how many cores they've been cramming into all their stuff. And you don't even need to go all the way to Threadripper like you were talking about. There is like diminishing returns, right? Like, once you get up above like 10, 12 cores, it starts to become, you're just building a monster to say you have it, right? But I would say probably in around the 3900X, which is significantly cheaper than the 3950X, but 95% as fast. I think that's probably the ticket for the processor. And then the graphics, I mean, graphics cards aren't cheap. But I would say, like, if you can afford the 2080 Ti from NVIDIA, that's a good one. Yeah. There's also supposed to be some new ones coming out that are like cheaper with lots of RAM and stuff. But right now, probably something in the like NVIDIA 2080, 2070 Super, and if you have more cash, 2080 Ti. That's what I would look for my combo. And I think you could probably do that once you put RAM and stuff in it. That'd probably cost you about $2,000, I would say, that combo.
And then, like, I think one of like 30, actually this has 32 gigs of RAM, which has been more than enough for me. And then my iMac at home has 64, just because with the iMac, I wanted to throw everything at it just because I kind of trusted it less. But yeah, I mean, in those graphics cards, I know it's really expensive when you're looking at it. Like the 1080 Ti, 2 years ago was the card, and it's super expensive, or even more. I don't know when that came out. But that guy has been holding up so well for me. I mean, it's longevity you're going for. It's like you building something that'll last you 5 years. And if you want to change out things every now and then, you can. But I think that's what you're getting. And if you don't travel a lot, it's really a good bang for your buck. I think people struggle with the Windows thing, but you've always been a Windows guy. So you've never experienced I love Mac too much. I love iMessage, because you don't have anyone to message.
No, that's fair. Yeah, and I don't have other devices that I need to it seamlessly goes from the bedroom to the whatever. It's like I use my computer in the computer room. So I don't need anything to go anywhere else, And my whole place is all servered up. So if I go to the bedroom, it just transmits over Plex
we'll talk
or whatever.
About that. What server do you have running? Do you have a NAS, a Synology thing, or what do you got going?
That needs to desperately be upgraded. That's another video I'm working on probably this month. I have the jankiest storage. I don't even want to tell you about it. It's just picture something weird and dusty and
we need to hear the before.
The before is, I think it's a D-Link D320, which doesn't even work on SMB with latest updates because of security issues. So operating systems won't even accept it. So you have to install custom firmware just to make it work. It's janky. All it does really is the videos that are finished and are good, not footage, but done, exported videos. I back those up to that. And my precious photos and stuff, they're just backed up on that. That's the in-between stages before it goes to the cloud. But it makes so much I have to, you're not supposed to do this, but I unplug it every time I shoot a video too, because it's so loud. It's got this little 20 millimeter fan that just sounds like a lawnmower. It's junk. So I'm working on upgrading that to a actual transcode kind of it's going to be my video editing server.
Oh, so you're going to edit off of it?
Yes, exactly. And more than one computer so that, we can increase productivity without passing around our dongles and everything, so ditching all. Exactly.
Does your PC have a 10 gig Ethernet?
It doesn't. I was going to put a card in there, but I think because I'm going to go with QNAP for the NAS, so I'm just going to use either USB 3.2 Gen 2 or Thunderbolt or something like that.
Gotcha.
And I don't know how many, megabits per second I'm going to get comparatively, but if it'll be enough to video edit. It'll be hundreds, and that'll be fine. So
right, man, I get so annoyed by that stuff that I won't even edit off of hard drives anymore. I'm just desktop or bust, man.
I'm having
I need
things attached.
the 2,000 megabytes per second internal SSD speeds. Maybe it's Premiere, I don't know, but it's just it does so much better when it's on your desktop, when it's on that internal SSD. Because I have a Synology NAS, which has been super helpful. It's one of the latest disk stations. And then at home, I have the LaCie 6 Big, which that one's good because it's Thunderbolt 3. So I'm getting speeds upwards of 1,000 megabytes per second anyways. So that's the only one that I'll actively edit off of if I have to. But yeah, Thunderbolt 3, eh?
And the drives that I'm not putting hard drives into them. I'm putting all 2 terabyte SSDs into them.
So maybe that will be.
It's going to be small. It's not going to be 100 terabytes. It's going to be 10 terabytes, but rated SSDs. So the random and 4Ks and stuff should all be really snappy, I'm hoping.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because I've been editing currently off of SSDs attached via USB 5 gig. Dangling off my computer. So I thought if that's working smooth, then a 10 gig USB box.
Hold on. So that works for you on the Blackmagic footage?
Yeah, when I actually when I finish this recording, I'm going to just pull the SSD out of the Blackmagic and then I have a USB-C just cord next to my computer. I just stick it in there. I just edit right off the drive every time.
Interesting.
But now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be moving the file. So there will be that lost time in front. I'm going to be throwing that on this hypothetical NAS that I'm building.
But at least it's going to be backed up. Or not backed up, at least the RAID, yeah.
Yeah,
You
it'll
have
be
redundancy.
redundant.
Yeah.
Because I don't have anything now. If for whatever reason that drive died while I had it plugged in the computer, well, that's it. There's that footage, it's gone. So I need some redundancy as well. And I'm not going to have two things dangling out just to like have duplicate of everything, right?
That's what I love about the new the Mac Pros with, it's handy that they have those USB 3, I think they're Thunderbolt, connections up at the front. But whenever I see the gorgeous, Mac Pro thing with just a dangled hard drive, I'm just like, that looks so stupid.
It's true.
What? Okay, so what tech is getting you excited right now?
Anything? All the way across the board? I guess I think we're all in that kind of like, there's some cameras brewing,
There's some cameras brewing.
Different
Specifically
brands,
tomorrow.
Oh, there is, yeah, right? There's there's an announcement tomorrow, right? So there's that. There's some Canon stuff that's like, that have been mostly like semi-announced, I suppose. Yeah. I don't love numbers on a piece of paper.
No, me neither.
And I think there's supposed to be another Sony announcement. Maybe they said June or something is another one. Maybe that's something too. Mm-hmm. Everybody's been talking about the next Sony thing, right? There's been some new Cine cameras that I've been playing with that I like. There's another Canon one coming out, the C300 Mark III. There's a lot of cameras.
Yeah.
I kind of want to have my next favorite camera. I'm ready for a new favorite camera.
Have you been, is the Blackmagic, has that been your guy?
Yeah, that's what I do. I do most video stuff on the Pocket, and then I have Sony stuff that I use. Like when I came and did your studio tour stuff, I brought all the Sony stuff. That's like my road gear. I don't like bringing the Blackmagic Pocket camera around with me. It's a lot. So I use Sony for anything photo and travel stuff. But in here, Blackmagic mostly, yeah. But I want something, like I want a new favorite thing just to learn all the quirks of it. It's a fun experience, right? Yeah. So once you kind of like master a camera, then you get bored. I don't know. I do.
I feel that. I feel like for me, I guess laptops have been my thing the past few years, just because I find it so fascinating, all the different things they're doing. But I think the first video I ever watched of yours was the Blackmagic, because I was hardcore the original Blackmagic Pocket cinema cameras, which were so fun and frustrating at the same time. And that was my first introduction to Blackmagic. And I enjoyed the footage I got out of it, because if I wasn't shooting that, I was shooting like with a Canon 70D. So in comparison, that footage was crisp. It was fun to color grade. It was challenging, but it was fun to color grade once you got something you liked. But the small batteries of the original Blackmagic, terrible. It would just automatically turn off sometimes, without knowing. This is such a mess of a camera, the OG. So once the new ones, the 4K and the 6K came back around, I was like watching videos like crazy about them. And I'm pretty sure you had like a ton of video. You either had a ton of videos on them or like one that popped off. And that's how I discovered your YouTube channel. And I don't even know how long you've been making videos. How did you get into YouTube?
Well, this iteration of YouTube has been since like February 2018, I suppose. Okay. That's when I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make camera videos or like in this kind of thing. But the channel, Gerald Undone channel, started in August 2016, and it was mostly nonsense videos that I thought were funny. Like classic YouTube videos of like just like really crappy sketches and stuff like that, or just like absurd comedy. That was what I was doing, but I was occasionally dropping in videos of like, got a new camera to film my nonsense videos, or here's a new light that I'm using. And those videos did really, really well, and people really liked them. And my nonsense videos did terribly. So after a while, I was like, you know what, maybe I should, okay, fine. I'll just make these videos that people want. And then there was a huge difference in the graph of YouTube, if you will, when I started doing that. So I've just been doing that since then. Interesting.
What were you doing at that time for work?
Well, when I first started, like back in the 2016, 2017 thing, Julie and I, my partner, we were doing a photography business. It was like sports photography. And that's why I had like all the gear, I suppose, that I could talk about in my videos. It was kind of like, I guess that's probably why it worked out. And then when I kind of like got bored, I guess, of the sports photography, so I started doing more like client video work while the YouTube channel transitioned into the video stuff. And then eventually the YouTube channel like was doing enough that I could step away from the client work thing. So it's kind of like a phasal shifting thing throughout, but a mix of that, I guess, essentially.
What was it like coming into that scene when you did? Because I feel like that was, 2016. That was probably around the time when like Peter McKinnon was coming on the scene, Mango Street. You had this wave of people who were making videos about cameras in a way that was, somewhat new. Did that like give you hope? You're like, oh wait, there's people who actually want to watch videos like this. Or did you watch YouTube videos religiously before? Did you kind of understand the landscape? What was it? What was your relationship with YouTube during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big fan of YouTube for a really long time. I actually had a channel before that back in like 2007, I would say.
Oh snap! What was that channel? We got to find that one.
That stuff doesn't exist. Although, you know what? Comparatively, those videos are innocent compared to the ones I was making in 2016 and 17 that were just absurd. I actually would rather people found the like old 2007 ones.
Wait, are these still up? Are your
I didn't actively take them down, but I have no idea how to log into that or do whatever. And I've tried to search for them and they don't show up. So I feel like they're not there anymore. But it was like acoustic guitar covers, essentially, is what they were. Just like
rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people did on YouTube, right? It was like they played cover songs and stuff like that.
Music covers, yeah. Well, I mean, that's so funny. Everyone has that. I feel like music is so connected to video stuff. Even Pete, he plays drums. Yeah. And no one knew that until he posted a clip. Like, I've played electric guitar for since 6th grade, almost my entire life, I feel like. But music is so hard to make money off of.
Sure, yeah.
Were you in a band? Did you do the rock and roll thing?
I always did it. Like, I did some jam stuff, but like it was always just for me. I feel like I saw something recently where somebody made this like funny slapback on like, I don't know if it was The Office or whatever, and they're like, I play for my own entertainment or something, and I was like, that I can relate to that. Yeah. That's the only I do it because I like to de-stress and stuff. And people, but every once in a while I'll post something when I have nothing to post. I'll be like, here's something I was working on, and so I'll just play like the piano or play the guitar. And people are like, that's great, you should do more of that. And I'm like, that's not what my content's gonna become, Or like live streams, people are always like, turn this into like a jam session or whatever. And I think that's fine when people do it, but I don't know, I just play for me. I enjoy it, Well,
it's almost like it's helpful to have something creative that isn't directly linked to your job. Because then it becomes your job.
I agree. But it's true what you say, though, because with the Studio Tour series, I've had this running gag. I asked you about it because you have a guitar in your... But I knew that you played guitar because I do my homework. But everybody else that I went to before you and after you have also had guitars, and nobody plays. So I also thought it was part of a YouTube thing of like, you have to have guitar art or whatever, like on your wall. And every single time I see it, I go, oh great, you play guitar? And they're like, no, I got that one from my uncle or whatever, like whatever the story is. Even Pete has a guitar in his new studio. And I asked him, and I don't think that it's that he can't play it. He's just not a guitar player. It's not his thing. He's just not a guitar player, yeah.
Oh, that's
so
funny.
I even brought that in. I was like, you also have a guitar on your wall, Pete. You're the only one, though, Sarah.
So funny. That actually
was like, I can play it. Yeah.
Man, I wish, again, every day I'm just like, man, if only I became a rock and roll star, man. If only. YouTube was my plan B, man. I wanted to tour with Paramore.
Oh, that's right. I actually think I saw like some old social stuff of you, and not even that old. I think you still kind of like stand on Paramore, right?
Totally, 100%. I mean, one of my Creative Spaces TV episodes was a guy who was buddies with the band, but he played basically the like percussion and third guitar. I forgot what they call those people.
Tambourine player.
The cowbell.
Whatever that thing's called, where you like run the wood thing.
But the music world is so small that he turned out to be like the other half of like all these other bands that I love. So I just love the music scene. It's so much smaller than people realize. But cameras, okay. We need to talk about cameras.
We're very tangential on this so far. So you were what I was supposed to answer that I don't think I did. Was I've been on YouTube, or I've been a fan of YouTube for a long time, starting back, and then I had made different videos and stuff. And so, I had my different channels that I watched, and as well as I do, the landscape and the direction of YouTube's kind of changed over. So I was definitely there when like Casey Neistat was a thing, right? Yeah. And that was probably part of the camera movement, maybe. Like he wasn't like a tech guy, but he did focus in a lot on the camera gear. And so that was a bit normalizing the idea that you can talk about cameras as like a thing. And then, being that I was doing my one-off videos at the same time that Peter was basically like forming a channel around that, and he had such quick success, I guess it did validate the idea that when I decided to transition, that it wasn't like I was venturing into some impossibly dark alley. Yeah, exactly. And potentially a big audience, so that you know that you're not carving out the smallest niche ever, that instead there's a sizable audience there, right? So
totally. The Blackmagic, what do you love about it? What do you hate about it? Because I still have the biggest love-hate relationship with these things.
I think it's the best image you can get for the price easily, and some usability. It's funny because the usability thing is where I'm split on. When you use other cameras that don't have a giant touch screen and have everything laid out in an intuitive way that you can just be like, I want these settings, like,
and then you go, what a literally. I love being able to punch in and then using the touchscreen to move around.
Yeah, you nice. Like zoom in, and so that's so good. But then at the same time, if you try to actually take the camera somewhere and use it, then those Canon 70D batteries, the ones for your 70D or whatever, I think that's the same ones, right? The LPE6, they get you like 3.5 minutes or whatever of runtime.
Yeah, if you start to do the thing that you actually do with cameras, record on them. Yeah, that's when it becomes a freaking problem.
But if you're like locked down, like I am, like where you, like I like to have everything fixed and doesn't move or whatever, then you can turn the Blackmagic into this great little monster that is way cheaper to. I mean, you got to put some money into the accessories for sure. I have way too many things attached to mine. Like, it's absurd. But then it becomes, what it is. A cinema camera becomes like a really affordable cinema camera with a great image. Not the best image, but for $1,200 or whatever it is, that's the best image you can get for $1,200 in my opinion, So that's what I love about it.
Yeah, I literally only use them. The only reason why I bought them is for like locked off interviews that I do for some of the like more corporate vibey stuff, where I have film help. They can set it, forget it, and it's just a good image with really good dynamic range. So if there's some windows behind me and we have a little bit of light on the subjects, I know we're going to be fine, right? So it's like not having to worry about some of those things, because I was shooting interviews with like, a GH5, a Sony A7S, and like a Sony,
all
like the Sony
time.
A7 III. Yeah, like for 3 angles.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I couldn't color grade any of it to look like each other. It just looked terrible. And so basically now what I do is I have the Blackmagic 4K and 6K, and one of them is recording in the high res, and I have 2 of them, and I just have the wide angle cropped in. Like the wide angle basically looks good if I crop in on me, and then I have a dedicated shot for the guest, and I can do what I need with only 2 of them. Because you get all that resolution.
You use that as the 6K is your like punch-in camera, and then the 4K is your angle on the guest. Yeah, that works fine. Yeah. And there's tons of value in that too, because that combo will cost you way less than a 3-angle setup for something that might not even get you the same image quality.
Exactly. Because I was like, I could buy another Sony camera, but I didn't even like the Sony A7 III with the Sony A7S. Like the 1080 image out of those cameras actually are pretty different. I could just shoot in log, but I hate color grading log.
They definitely changed their color bias with the A7 III versus the previous ones too. So you have to do some work. You're not really giving yourself any favors by buying the same brand and that. You have to buy like the same model almost, So
100%. Yeah. What's your relationship like with Sony? Do you love every single camera? Do you wish like, oh my gosh, where's the Sony A7S III? I love Sony, but sometimes it's just like when I see the Canon stuff, I'm like, ooh, Sony, wait, you got to pick it up. Like you guys were the ones who did everything that, we asked of you, which I think, again, the new cameras that's coming out, I think we're going to see the start of that again, but I think people are concerned.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's the investment in glass or whatever, but if you look at things just from like a bystander, it's great that everybody's like pushing back, because and it's hard to take anything away from Sony when they were so far ahead and have done so. And I feel like anybody that's caught up because of the fire that Sony like lit under them, right? So that's awesome, and I love that. But
capitalism. That's how capitalism should work, not like.
And it's great for us
having 2 phone providers. Yeah, that's when it works. That's great.
And so I love that. And some of those cameras that came out in that push, like the A7 III, are still like some of the best value cameras of all time. And
I love
to
the
this
A7
point,
III.
how can you not? Like up to this point, I would say that all other cameras have done is like matched it.
Yeah.
Nobody's really beat it in terms of everything that it can do. There are some cameras that are better in some ways, but as sort of like just anybody that's tried to make a well-rounded camera has basically just tied the Sony or just said, we're not going to have autofocus or something like taking something big out, right? So it's still a great system, but again, I want the next one like everybody else, but I'm not part of the like A7S III, meme culture of it or whatever. I think that I want it to be.
I gave up with it.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm fine. Like I was so slow to the A7 III because I was that delusional person. It's like, I'm not going to buy the A7 III because the A7S III is going to come out. I gotta wait for that.
It's been like 2 years, hasn't it? Like
literally,
2 years.
Yeah, literally, I think like 9 months went by and I was like, oh, I probably need to buy this A7 III. And I love it. It's great. But it's so disappointing because I'm like Sony gang, but Blackmagic GH5, I'm pretty actually camera agnostic, I think. But whenever Canon creeps up, because, I used to use them and then I made the Sony jump. I was one of those mini people. Whenever Canon news comes out, as high as my hopes get, I just don't believe them. Like with this new,
I know what you mean.
I'm like what is it, R5? Why am I blanking on the name? Right, R5? I'm just like, and we know the price point is crazy. But I don't know if I believe all of it. I don't know. What do you think of the R5? Have you used the EOS R as well?
I have. Okay. And I didn't love that camera.
Okay.
That was an example of one that I thought, especially at launch, I was like, oh, it's a worse A7 III. Cool.
Yeah.
See ya. You know what I mean? Like I didn't care. It was like, it crops the same as my GH5. The autofocus was poor. I was like, I already have a GH5. Why do you want me to buy new lenses, Although those lenses are fantastic, and now that they've been adding more to that lineup, that RF lineup is great. So that's another reason to get excited about the R5, right?
Yeah.
But the specs on the R5 are absurd. They're absolutely absurd. So it's like, there's no way, right? Like that camera's gonna melt as soon as you use it.
I think that's what, I'm like, there's no way, because of the specs, I'm like, there's no way that it's gonna be practical, where I could use it for YouTube, but also use it for an hour interview or something. I don't know.
That being said, though, one thing that Canon has always been good for is that when they do release something, especially when it's like their higher ticket, like sort of pro-ish bodies, usually they're pretty reliable and indestructible. The only thing is that they like handicap certain features, but they specifically address those in the specs. They were like 4K, uncropped, no like with autofocus or whatever. Like they mentioned all the things that the like the regular gags of like how Canon like eliminates something, whatever they say, like internally crippling their cameras so that they don't cannibalize themselves. But
when they had the new 90D and you couldn't record in 24 frames per second in 1080, like what the hell was that?
Exactly. So they specifically mention it's like it doesn't have those problems. And so if you take that and you think, and Canon usually they don't melt and they usually last, so then. Right. Okay, like did you completely change attitudes to where now you're Sony, where you like put all this crazy tech in, but it's unreliable? Right. Because now Sony's been more and more reliable with every camera they come up, but they're not coming out with new features, right?
I know.
So I don't know who's doing what.
It's the reverse. It's literally, that's what happens. That is the cycle. Because it happened with MacBook and PCs. That's exactly what happened in 2016 with the MacBook Pro. It started to be the most unreliable computer or laptop out there. With the keyboard, with display issues, with and wasn't
now they're not doing anything
cooling.
fancy. They're just making everything work.
Exactly. And now Apple said, okay, we'll chill. And this last previous update, the 2019, super, they didn't do anything out of the box, but they iterated. And it's actually a really good machine now. But then the PC laptop world is over here putting like 3 screens on one computer. And I'm just like, what is this world that we're living in?
So I don't know which side of that Canon is on. Obviously the specs are outstanding, but I never make videos on, like I don't make news or rumor type videos very much, where it's like I don't ever talk about a product unless it's in my hands.
No, totally. I totally.
So I like we can gab about it, but as far as like, do I have an opinion on it? I'm like, I've read the same things you've read, and I'm like, okay, but I so badly just want to even just point it at a wall and press record and just leave it there for like an hour and then come back to it and see what happened. That's all I want to do with the R5.
Yeah. No, 100%. And the EOS R, can you explain to me in, you're a little bit more science, I feel like, with cameras than me. Why? So we have finally a Canon mirrorless camera. Why do the lenses have to literally be almost like bigger than the E-mount? I don't understand. Like mirrorless cameras should be sleek, thinner. But then you look at that 24-70, you look at any of the new lenses and they're starting an entirely new lens line. You would think they would be a little bit more portable. Am I wrong to say that? What's going on? Why? Why do they have to be such big hunks of glass?
I feel like somewhere along the line, somebody equated mirrorless with like small and portable and everything. Yeah. Maybe that was like when it was first trying to make a name for itself.
Okay.
Because
so
DSLRs
is that just not
everything.
True? So maybe for the body, but not for the glass.
But I mean, like now, you could still do both. You could still make small mirrorless. It really comes down to what you're trying to do. So if you're going for a large sensor, then you're going to be bigger, because Micro Four Thirds is still pretty compact for mirrorless, right? But if you're going to go for a large sensor, then that's one thing to consider. And if you want to be able to make really fast lenses, which is, they did like that 24-70 f2 or whatever, right? Which is like, that's like almost like a brag lens of like, look what we're able to make. Well, that's all just a ratio of the elements. So the element of the lens itself has to be wide. And so then the mount has to be wide in order to put it on. Right. And then all the pieces of glass are wide. Yeah. And then you have to fix the image as it comes in, because when you do something really wide, that can also zoom. Then you have to have pieces of glass that are there solely just to like correct weird things that happen with the light. So then you end up with like a bunch of elements, which then makes the lens big and chonky and the price goes up and everything. But you don't have to make a 24-70 f2. But I guess when you're in your marketing meetings or whatever and you're coming up with the next plan, you got to decide, are we going to make something that's the smallest thing? Are we going to make the fastest thing, the best thing? And I guess there's different ways that you can go. Mirrorless isn't restricted to just travel or portable or whatever. Apparently, you can make big even Nikon made their like that knocked lens that was like the 0.95. So like we can, really the only thing that mirrorless says is that your flange distance is short because you don't have a mirror box anymore. So the lens is actually closer. So I guess it can be smaller that way. But really, that only makes a difference of, you don't have a mirror box. Outside of that, it's up to your imagination what you do, you know? So.
And with these flange distances, I guess that when everyone has a mirrorless camera, that's going to make the lens market even, like, basically I'm used to just adapting everything, right?
Yeah.
Everyone said, hey, if you have Canon glass, you're good. Right? You can just use a speed booster, an adapter. You can adapt it probably to most modern cameras and you'll be fine. But with everyone going mirrorless and that flange distance changing, will that change how adapting works? Like, I won't be able to take the new Canon mirrorless lenses and put them on my Sony mirrorless camera with an adapter, right?
There's only like one or two exceptions to that rule where it's like, there's a big enough gap between the different mirrorless sizes. I think there's one between Nikon and Sony where you actually can. Oh, but most of the time it's only like 2 or 3 millimeters. Like from Canon to Sony is only like 2 millimeters. So that just, you can't physically make an adapter to fit in there. So I'm going to say outside of like an odd exception, it's always going to has to be DSLR glass goes on a mirrorless body. As far as what that means for the market moving forward, I mean, there's always going to be lots of glass out there and people love vintage lenses and stuff like that. But I do think that we're still in a period where there probably will still make like EF lenses. But if we were having this conversation 5 years from now, I don't know if it would be like, why bother just so people can adapt them? Right?
Yeah.
Like that. I mean,
right.
Who's buying DSLRs then? And
can you speak to, because for a while people have associated, mirrorless, it's like, there's more practical things that line up with video, right? With mirrorless, you have an EVF and you can, like, a lot of photographers like the practicality of like an optical viewfinder, and it can there's certain things associated with it. Is that becoming, like, can you just speak to that in terms of like photographer or videographer? Is everyone going mirrorless? Is that 100% where all of these cameras are going? Like, will a DSLR camera be new? Like, will a new DSLR camera come out in 7 years?
I feel like the companies, the ones that are making DSLRs and who's buying them, is for professionals that have shot a certain way all along and just want a refresh. But I don't know if but those same professionals, I've actually talked to some who I know, like with Nikon, they always use like the D4, D3, D4, D5, and Nikon makes another one of those. So they're making them for that person. They're not making them for some new consumer to come in and buy a $7,000 DSLR or whatever, right? But those same people are having the inner debate where they go, should I get the new, D6 or should I switch over to the mirrorless stuff? So I feel like they're making them just to satisfy, give the 1DX Mark III. I mean, that's got to be the last one of those, I would guess. You know what I mean? For the people that were heavy into the 1DX Mark II, are hesitant about jumping over to mirrorless, they have an option. But this might be your last option. And then, I'm just guessing over here. But I don't think it's for anybody new. I think anybody new and anybody who's hobbyist or anybody who's buying a camera for a hybrid purpose or any of those things, which is a huge portion. We just described everybody that isn't shooting birds, right? They're buying mirrorless. They got to be. I would say so. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know how long or when the full phase out is going to take place, but I mean, we're definitely on the ramp where it's got to be it's got to be, right?
Yeah, And not to mention, like, just the market for cameras is down so exponentially because of smartphones. So, that thing that people have to call people, Yeah,
I heard about those.
Okay.
I don't need to call anyways.
Okay.
That's the reason, by the way, why I got it I said I got it around NAB 2019. It's because I thought this is going to be completely inefficient if I'm trying to post stuff from the floor. It's like, what am I going to take a photo? I'm going to go back to the hotel. I'm going to like process it and then upload it with my computer. Yeah. So I was like, I sort of promised my viewers, I was like, I will get a phone and I will take photos and post the stuff while I'm there. So I got it as like a coverage device. And that's why I got Android at the time, was because I think I got the Pixel 2, which was like the best photo phone you could get at the time, right? So that's what I got it for. It was my like little coverage thing.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, and then I'll open up the floor if you want to chat about anything, is cinema cameras. Because there is an internal struggle with me where, I mean, I've always been like, GH5, A7S, A7 III, that's like my sweet spot. I want to be able to shoot 4K, shoot good slow motion, but usually I'm a one-man band. So, the idea of a cinema camera is just too much for me. But the more I'm like out and about doing bigger projects, just the small ideas of, being able to plug in 2 XLRs straight into the camera, be able to rig it up, right? Be able to do X, Y, and Z. It kind of does interest me a little bit. I start looking at, but then with Sony, because that's most of the glass that I have,
right?
The FS5, even the FS7, I'm like, man, sometimes you're actually losing features once you go up there. Like I need reliable autofocus. I need a lot of things that are in these A7 IIIs that might not even be in a cinema camera.
Yeah, I don't think that you can go from what you're doing to an FS5 or 7.
Right.
I think that will feel clunky and weird.
Right.
Plus, I don't love the ergonomics on that either. So you'd probably be like, why did I do this?
Yeah, exactly.
Like when you're like poking at it.
Exactly. Well, no, and that's my question. What, like, going forward, who are they appealing in that market? Because I really think you could knock it out of the park with like the step up from the A7S2, A7 III for people like me. I feel like you could really like do the FS5 well and then get people like me to buy them. But then if you put everything in there that I want, then you're jeopardizing the FS7, right? And no one's going to buy that. So what, like, I don't know. I don't get it.
They made that camera. They made the camera that put everything in there that sort of made the FS7 pointless, unless you buy it used.
What's that camera?
FX9.
Well, okay, but that's huge.
Yeah, so I was going to say, they have the cameras that you need and want. They're just big and expensive. Is what I think, right?
Yeah, because I still need it to be, I need to be able to handle it,
Right.
For hours upon whatever. Yeah, so I guess I'll probably just be stuck over in A7 III land for the rest of my life, I guess, right? In Black Magic land.
It depends how much you want to spend too, though, because like the C500 Mark II, which is more manageable size-wise, is amazing. That's probably my favorite camera right now. But it's like 16 grand, I think. So you got to be like, do I want to spend 16 grand on my camera?
Well, because that's what I started looking at, and that's what stinks so bad about being so hardcore Sony. But then you start looking at cinema lines, and the C200 Mark II, like that looks, the dual pixel AF, and like it actually looks like a pretty promising camera. But then you get in the nitty gritty of the Kodaks, and then
on the C200,
it doesn't. Yeah, on the C200.
Yeah, there's no 10-bit.
Yeah, and I'm like.
That's why I never bought the C200.
I'm like, why would I go with a cinema camera if I'm not even getting 10-bit? It's so...
Yeah, exactly.
This world is so... You could just stay up late at night just thinking about it every night, just being like, there's no perfect camera.
I think that maybe for you, maybe the C300 Mark III, which is still in the like, coming soon, like it's official and people have had... review units, but it's not for sale yet, right?
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get my mitts on one of those.
Huh.
But I just had the C500 Mark II, so I feel like I know what Canon's doing this year with their cine cameras. So this is basically a Super 35 crop version of the C500 Mark II for significantly cheaper. It's like 10 instead of 16K.
Interesting.
But you got like amazing autofocus, all the features that you can want, great audio, great video, great image quality, great dynamic range. It like easy features too, just like face detection. I stand in front of it, it records me and I'm good to go. It's got all that, but it doesn't have any of the weird stuff, like no 10-bit and stuff, so.
Do you think it's going to have high frame rate in 4K?
It has 4K, I think it has 4K 120.
Oh, really?
It's either it does, yeah, because the C500 Mark II has 4K 60, so this one has a smaller sensor and it can read out. I would say I'm 90% it's 4K 120, but it's minimum 4K 60 for sure.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, no, that's interesting because okay, I said that was the last thing, but I actually do want to pick your brain on color grading because the thing with me in the Blackmagic, which is such a the love-hate, is for some reason I can only get it looking exactly the way I want it in DaVinci Resolve. I don't know why. Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because it's staying in the family. But for some reason, I can't tweak the knobs in Premiere the same way that I can in Resolve. And it's just, I can't get it looking the way. So I tried so many things. I tried like downloading, different LUTs or different camera profiles. I downloaded something called Emotive Color, and it's a guy who is familiar with the Alexa color profile, and he basically made a profile for the Blackmagic that makes your Blackmagic look like the Alexa color, which is, it gets it to a point where then I can color grade it, but then it doesn't look like my Blackmagic anymore.
Right.
So I struggle, and whenever I get my hands on footage from a Canon camera, it is so easy to color grade.
Yeah. That could just be you. People always have the debate of like, oh, these colors are better than those other colors. And I think a lot of time it's just a personal bias. And I mean, if it makes your life easy and you like it, then that's you. Then you're a Canon. That's just how your brain works.
Yeah, I'm just so used to Sony, and I do that's the thing. I can get a certain look out of Sony that I've nailed, and then maybe again it just takes years to perfect it, that I haven't done with a Blackmagic yet, because I'm basically comparing. Like, I did a video where I used someone else's footage, and they had Canon EOS R log footage, and for some reason that log footage was just so easy to get a really cool look out of it, and whenever I handle the Blackmagic film, it's just so flat. And it's just hard. Yeah, it's hard. I just got to work with it more, I guess. You're going to have to give me a one-on-one tutorial or something.
If my theory of like some colors just speak to people better, I guess I like Blackmagic. So I find that even when I just do stupid stuff to it, I'm like, oh, that's good. I don't know. I just kind of I like everything. Where conversely, I've had other cameras where people, I won't bother making a debate about it, so I won't say any brands, but other cameras where people say like, I love these colors out of it, and I find I can't get I'm like, that doesn't look like me. And I just spend so much time with it until I like pollute something else.
Yeah.
And then I'm never quite happy with it, you know? But I think Blackmagic is one that I like, but I've talked to other people, people that you know too, that have the same thing where they're just like, every time, you know, and I'm pushing back and forth and I just can't get it to go the way that I want. So I don't know. And those same people I found have also said that they like the look of Canon right out of camera, or like just taking C-Log and just like doing a couple simple adjustments to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that anything can be changed in anything, and you can make anything look like anything with enough time. But I guess the question is like, do you want to be frustrated in spending your time on it? You know, where do you want to spend your time?
Totally. Yeah, I love, I found a great profile. I don't think I've ever publicly said this. So if you guys are dope enough to stick to the very end of the podcast, I have found a groove on the A7 III. It's PP10, and then it's Cine 4, and then the Pro Gamma or whatever. And then I add a little bit of saturation to it. And for some reason on all of the other Sony cameras, for some reason when it's either the Gamma or the Black or whatever, where you can select Pro. But there's no like Pro in any of the other Sony cameras that I found. Like the RX100, 5, 6, 7, and also the A7S and yada, yada, yada. And for some reason, that is just like the perfect look for me. And it frustrates me because I can't match it with other Sony cameras, and it's a Sony profile.
That's funny. Which camera is this on?
It's the A7 III.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's where you choose, where you choose in between like movie, still, IT,
so your
7, whatever.
Yeah.
The Gamma. There's a Pro option. But anyways, anything you want to touch on that we didn't? I mean, I think it was just fun to shoot the shiz about cameras and stuff.
Yeah, I think that this is what people like to, use me for, is an excuse to get nerdier than they're allowed to normally on their channel. If I have 100%. Gerald on, then I'll have to entertain him by talking about these things. It's not that I want to,
no,
but then you're
of course not.
Tell me about Cine cameras.
Well, Cine cameras and yeah, I just need to find the version of you for laptops now. Because I always see people's eyes glazing over once they ask me about laptop recommendations. And I was like, well, what do you need for this? And blah, blah, blah. I could talk forever.
But that's recommendations in general, right? Is that people want, they want like an answer. And I feel, you obviously feel the same way, where you can't, in good conscience, you can't just like say, oh, you got to buy the MacBook without knowing what the hell they're going to use it for, right?
I just had that. Literally, my mom's friend was buying a new laptop for her son going to college. And she's like, what's the best laptop? And I'm like, bro, you got to tell me, what is his major? Does he do any type of content creation? Does he want a tablet? Like, does he need to write on the computer? Does he game?
Yeah.
It was like a whole thing, like spanning 2 weeks of like emailing back and forth. I got to start like a consultation. You can start a camera consultation. I can start a laptop, and it's just an hour of intense. Pay us $50 and we'll tell you what to buy.
At the end, they'll just be like, I don't care. Okay. Just get me the red one. What red one? I didn't say anything about that.
Okay, actually, wait, one more question, and then I'll let you go. Yeah. I'm so sorry. The Godox lights, I've actually never heard of those before you made a video on them. And I was always thinking that aperture lights were like the more affordable option to all of the, I grew up being like, oh, the ones that you want are the Fresnel, blah, 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 or the, what are the tubes? The like Kino flows, right? Yeah. So those were like my North Stars, but those were so expensive lights. So once aperture came along, I was like, oh, a lot of output, soft light, great modifiers. And it was the cheaper version. So is Godox like a new kid on the block where they're making even like more affordable versions of those lights? Or I've just never heard of them before. What's their story?
I would say similar age actually to Aperture, but they started in different places. Aperture definitely started as like the cheaper option. And now I think that they've kind of occupied more like king of the mid-tier and a great value.
Right.
Because they have stepped, like the 300D Mark II is a premium light.
Yeah.
And it costs a decent amount of money, right? It's not like the $200 light like all the Aperture stuff was before. But Godox, or Godox, depending on where you're from, they used to make like mostly strobe stuff, so like little flash units for cameras, and they were a really affordable option for a wireless sync thing. So they had their like X wireless stuff.
Gotcha.
So you could get like for like a Canon flash would cost you like $600, and a Godox flash would cost you like $150 for like a similar output, and you could sync them all together, and you could use them on different systems, so you didn't have to sell your Canon stuff if you switched to Nikon. That's where they started around the same time that Aperture did, and then they moved into continuous lights. But they were like really cheap, like, you know, $100 for like an Aperture clone, but it was really noisy and had to plug it into the wall, didn't have batteries, like those kinds of things. But they still made those. So this year, they've made a push more to basically try. Yeah. And you could argue that they're basically just using all the like headway and R&D that like Aperture's done.
That they did.
to make like a knockoff light at $300 less. So it's still... It's like it's in that mid-tier pricing, but it's like giving you like 95% of what Aperture does for $300 less. It becomes the better buy. Aperture's probably still a little bit more like better for color. And I can't say in terms of, I do know the Aperture people, and I know that they're great and their team is great.
Yeah,
and
I love them.
I don't know if my Godox lights were to fall apart, what I would do or who I'm supposed to contact or what that process is like, right?
That's true. It's because you have to think about the longevity of these things that you buy, and like, is there going to be customer service? And in terms of just like, will the innovation continue? Because it's really exciting to, like Aperture very clearly has a roadmap, right? Yeah. It's cool to see that, okay, even if your light doesn't have Wi-Fi capabilities, hey, this thing is going to come along that you can like add on to it to where it will have Wi-Fi capabilities.
That's a pretty sweet thing, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for that. And I have been obsessed with the little MC lights. Oh my God, the RGB ones.
They're outstanding.
Oh my God, the amount of output that I'm getting from, I only had 2 when I went back to Texas. And I filmed every single video with only 2 MC lights, and it lit me perfectly. It's crazy.
Wow. When did you get back to New York, by the way? How long were you in Texas for?
I was there 2 months, and I got back in New York last week, I think.
I thought so, because I thought you were still posting some Texas stuff like a couple weeks ago, right? So
definitely, yeah. Yeah, it's just one of those things where like after I made one video about it, and so many people have opinions about things happening during COVID stuff, I was like, I'm not going to talk about personal things anymore, where I am, what I'm doing, bringing family into it. I'm just going to... This is why I started making more tech videos.
Did you stay with your family the whole time?
Yeah. Well, I did 2 weeks in like a hotel just because we wanted to make sure that we didn't have it. Did the quarantine thing.
But it was at your like parents' house for the rest of the time?
A month and a half at my parents' house.
How was that for John? Was he with you the whole time?
Yeah. So it was a lot. I think he's still like, we obviously love my family. We all get along, but when there's 5 people in one house and you're like my parents, his in-laws, it's like, I understand how that's tough.
A month and a half with the in-laws, even if they're the greatest in-laws.
Exactly. It's still a lot, right? So yeah, he gets a gold star for that. But it was ultimately, it was good. It was just like, it was a lot. I haven't been back home for that long since I moved out. So
that makes sense.
It was a wild ride, and I'm glad I'm back, even if the pandemic is here. Is alive and well here.
That's a funny soundbite. I'm like, so what do you think of your parents, Sarah? I'm glad to be back, even with the pandemic in New York. Okay.
Nah, I love them so.
Love
but
you, Mom.
I think, yeah. I think people can understand once you like become your own human, and then you're back.
For sure.
And it's, I mean, I could probably do that for several months if I like had my own house there, had my own apartment. You know, it's just different when you're like living in the same household with other people that you're not used to living with. So
yeah, for sure.
But anyways, Gerald, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun to chat. And where can people find you? Give me one piece of content or YouTube video that you're excited about that they should go directly check out.
I'm mostly on Tumblr. So
okay. Tumblr and TikTok.
Yeah, exactly.
Gerald Undone. Okay.
Yeah, YouTube, I guess. Like, I am Gerald Undone everywhere. So type that into whatever you like, and then I'll show up. And if it's purple, you probably have the right page. But yeah, YouTube is where I do all my stuff. And I don't know. I guess like I stay within the topic that we talked about, all that kind of stuff. But I go through phases just like you do. Mm-hmm. Well, your phase has been really long, but where it's like sometimes
I've been talking about laptops for a long time.
I thought it was going to be like, oh, Sarah's just into some new laptops. And it's like, this is like the laptop like connoisseur now. But depending on what you're into, I don't know, subscribe and stick around because I try to mix it up where it's like this will be like a color video, then we'll do a camera, then we'll do a weird tutorial or something, you know?
And then,
but if you're into...
Yeah, he did a studio tour, so that would be a good video. Siphon off some of my audience. He came to the Peachy HQ. And yeah, pretty much, I think that's the only time I've given a proper tour of this space because I keep waiting for it to be perfect. But then it turns out it's never going to be perfect. So that was probably pretty good timing.
You were a great sport about it too.
Oh, thank you. It was fun. Yeah, I think that was before I was busy during that time. It's so funny. I'm like almost, I don't want to say, because I don't want to soundbite of like, I'm thankful for the pandemic, but like I don't want to say that because it was real and people are suffering from it. But I am thankful for the little bit of downtime that I have had. I'll say that.
Sure.
Like Animal Crossing, and it's been a good reset. Because yeah, I remember when you guys came and shot that, like I had so many videos due, like literally the next day too. And I'm like, I got to change some stuff. I got to get more organized. I got to get my life together. And then a pandemic happened.
I know what you're saying, so I feel comfortable in saying, that's good.
Yeah.
without saying like, what do you think of the pandemic? It's great.
It's great.
It's great.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, hopefully we are on the up and up, right? With everything. And I'm amazed that we were able to steer the conversation so long without mentioning it. So gold stars for us. But yeah, everyone check out Gerald's channel, his socials down in the show notes below. Thank you so much for joining me. And guys, make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to That Creative Life. And I also started posting back to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/That Creative Life, where I post the video full episode a week after the audio. So of course you audio guys are getting all of the juicy stuff. You're the first people to hear it. But yeah, all those links will be in the show notes below as well. Gerald, thank you for being here. Signing off. Until next time, thanks for listening, guys.